Hello, everybody. My name is Rébecca Pierrot. I'm a PhD student from University of Montpellier in France, and I'm also a dramaturge. I'm working with Krzysztof on his shows, and I'm working within the digital performance network since the beginning of this structure, with the first show, Brave New World. So my speech now will focus on the dramaturgy for a structure as digital performance network. My speech is entitled The Digital Performance Network, a Dramaturgy of Space. My first point, the digital performance network, an Agora 2.0. Is everything okay?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Continue.
The Digital Performance Network was born 2 years ago on the initiative of Krzysztof Garbaczewski during the process of creating the show Nowy Wspaniały Świat, Brave New World, after Aldous Huxley in 2023. This project brought together artists from 4 countries, Poland, Greece, Ukraine, and Georgia. Subsequent shows have involved up to 6 countries, such as the Books of Jacob Part 2. When DPN was founded, the idea was to create a space where the arts and new technologies would be inseparable, combining theater and virtual reality. But this creative space is also a space for reflection on the new digital artistic communities, and these artistic projects can be described as socio-political, philosophical. All it takes is for the one member of the Digital Performance Network to ask another member of the DPN platform to create a DPN show. Each participating member performs the show on the stage of their country of residence while playing with their partners via virtual reality, in which they find the avatars of the other actors, thus ensuring the link and simultaneity of performances despite geographical distance. International artistic collaborations within theatrical institutions, for example in Poland, are very often impossible due to their high financial cost and a cumbersome complex production and distribution process. The DPM is a response to these difficulties. It was born of the desire of various artists to collaborate and experiment independently on the banks of theatrical institutions that are often resistant to the use of VR. The virtual zone enables them to work together, rehearse and perform in front of face-to-face and remote audiences, also scattered around the world. It's a new multicultural creative space, easily accessible to as many people as possible, whether creators or spectators. Virtual reality becomes a marginal encounter zone, a new territory for artists and audiences to explore. This still relatively unknown territory allows us to reflect on new parameters of artistic creation and representation by questioning, among other things, the dehierarchization of the entertainment world, the position of directors in the context of simultaneous performances, the work of the actor, which takes on a new dimension with the introduction of avatars, as well as our relationship with the audience, which becomes closer and more numerous. What does this new model of virtual community bring? Going beyond borders and creating a digital agora reinvents our relationship with the stage and its traditional modes of expression. The virtual stage temporarily extracts us from our assigned country and distances us from our home territory, offering a kind of shelter, a place for intercultural reflection and debate. One of Krzysztof Garbaczewski's great inspirations for the formation of DPN was Hakim Bey's temporary autonomous zone, an anarchist writing inspired by pirate utopias. The theatrical community would then be a group of artists sailing between worlds, exploring new territories and probing the troubled waters of our times. As for me, a recurring inspiration in our projects has been Édouard Glissant and his reflections on the two mondes, or one word in relation. This philosophical and poetic concept reinvents our way of being in the world by opposing the unifying idea of globalization with the concept of exchanges born of encounters in which each person's identity intersects without being lost, and above all, without one culture taking precedence over another. In the end, the DPN becomes an agora, an open public space where speech is free. In this respect, our show Agora, based on Alain Badiou's La République de Platon, Plato's Republic, was the most representative. French philosopher Alain Badiou's text, which is the result of his dialogue with Plato's text, of which he had undertaken a new translation, served as the basis for our show, produced with a South Korean team made up of Kyung Hee-an and her students from Far East University in Gamgokmyeon. On the Polish side, the show was produced by Łódź's Fabryka Sztuki and the Korea Company. This project took on a new dimension when the democratic crisis erupted in Seoul, triggered by President Yoon Suk-yeol's declaration of martial law on the night of December 3, 2024, before having to back down 6 hours later in the face of citizen pressure. So I asked each South Korean actor to write an intimate monologue in which they would recall where they were and the thoughts and emotions that ran through them when the martial law was announced. These monologues, integrated into the show, also formed the common thread in a dialogue with excerpts from Michel Foucault's Utopian Body. The Agora show is therefore a special one, as it was marked by a completely unexpected political event which fed into the subject matter of the programmed show. But we could also mention other shows in which the participation of countries such as Ukraine or Georgia had a defined influence. Their national identity alone gave a singular scope to the text stage and demonstrated the need for the existence of a virtual community capable of giving a voice and, above all, a presence to the artist beyond their geographical borders. In the light of world events, virtual theater becomes a necessary and urgent proposition in a world whose cartographic contours are constantly being redrawn by authoritarian, even dictatorial rulers. Finally, as I mentioned earlier, this hybrid theater allows each artistic team to have a local audience in person and a wider, because international, audience thanks to the internet. Theater 2.0 therefore offers access to a more diverse audience, reaching out not only to geographically distant spectators, but also to those who stay away from theaters for various reasons, such as the price of seats, or the confined nature of the venue, the theater as a building, which can keep many potential spectators at a distance, especially among the younger set. A platform like DPNs can compensate for this elitist aspect by offering live online performances that are free of charge and open to all spectators. What's more, in the VR chat, spectators can discover a show by chance and benefit from the experience. My second point, a rhizomatic dramaturgy. Developing a dramaturgy for a DPN show means first and foremost thinking in terms of links. Gilles Deleuze and Félix Guattari's image of the rhizome illustrates the horizontal structure of our platform. This structure inevitably impacts on the creative process of our shows and the works themselves. The theatrical performances of the various participating members have singular aesthetics, yet are inserted like so many facets into the common show. As we saw with the Agora show, the form of the structure and the artistic works created are intrinsically linked. Agora evokes the workings of the DPN without being its manifesto, this show being above all a work based on that of a philosopher questioning the notion of democracy. It's true that the DPN's unhierarchical structure is reflected in the creative process during which the actors became co-authors, each enriching the piece with their own text based on an intimate reading of a national political event before performing it on stage. And that's what's important to bear in mind with every DPN project. Everyone must enjoy a certain degree of autonomy. The project is generally led by a director. Each DPN member can direct a show and contact one or more DPN members to produce it. If the DPN chooses to work with the dramaturge, the latter must outline the main lines on the show while leaving enough space for the other artists involved in the project. Each artistic team living in a different country will inevitably have its own history, experience, and sensibility, which it must be able to use to nourish the common work. Its knowledge and experience constitute a singularly valuable contribution to an artistic creation. Thinking about the dramaturgy of DPN shows perhaps mean first and foremost thinking in terms of space. Since we evolve in two realities simultaneously, our material reality and the virtual reality. What's more, our material reality is made up of countries sometimes located on different continents, so we are constantly navigating between different temporalities, whether in the real world through the broadcasting of images in real time, or in the virtual world via avatars. All these spaces cohabit in the black box represented by the theater stage, where actors and avatars interact, but also stage and screens that reveal the virtual world and expose the scene of each artistic team participating in the performance from its own country. Sometimes even one screen shows the scene with the integration of avatars into the image, while another screen shows the scene in its reality at degree 0. Territory and temporality thus play a central role in these shows, and it's an interesting fact that they reflect what we experience on a daily basis at a time when the world is permanently connected via screens, while paradoxically a movement of identity withdrawal is gaining ground in many countries. Space like technology has always been at the heart of theater. The stage circumscribes a well-defined perimeter of action for those who must create their show and the actors who will perform on it. So it's interesting to see how this perimeter can be exploited to both tell and show the world. How this territory changes and shifts on screens, splitting up on other scenes projected simultaneously, forming a constellation that extends into a virtual world. The perimeter of the theater stage is constantly metamorphosing. On stage, reality becomes multiple and projections are its extensions. The projections of the real and virtual worlds fit together like a puzzle, providing an opportunity for the narrative to explode the linearity of the story. Geometric shapes play an important role in the visuals of the show, as in the case of so-called Humanity in Madness, with its reference to the black square or black hole mentioned in the text, or hypertetrahedron, which unfolds in the virtual world of the show. Probably because reflection of the notion of space and frontiers of the construction of a creative community spread across Europe and beyond has a direct impact not only on the dramaturgy, but also on the scenography of the shows, in which these geometric shapes form the basis of a common architecture that can be modulated at will, just as VR and screens can be used to modulate spatio-temporal space and become the privileged tools of the dramaturgy. The basic text, which is common to all, must also be treated in an open-ended way, allowing for different entrances and exits according to each country's needs. The common dramaturgy offers meeting points that enable the show to be performed simultaneously, but each country has a margin of freedom to adapt the script to its own scenic needs and personal interpretation. Creating shows in the DPN means walking a tightrope between a shared vision and a willingness to allow each individuality to express itself. In the interview I conducted with Krzysztof for Théâtre Public magazine, he explained, and I quote, "At DPN, we achieve what I would call a symphony of diversity. We have a common score, but each theater can play it differently. For me, the balance between community and individuality is not an end state, but a dynamic balance of forces. The creative process then resembles a choreography of variables, not a hierarchy." It's the end of the quote. This thinking is also reflected in the way the textual material is treated. Most of the shows are not based on a linear narrative telling a story with a beginning, a series of events, and an end. Instead, to use digital terminology, they are more like scenes boards, where the script becomes a map, echoing the virtual words boards and the participating countries. Scenes, like tectonic plates, can then move, be exchanged, overlap, or dilated according to the needs of the team. Because creating a common dramaturgy doesn't necessarily mean creating a dramaturgy of understanding, and friction is often fruitful in this kind of work. To use a geometric image, the tension between points of view helps to shape space, to make its contours vibrate. In Brave New World, in Poland, for example, we encouraged the other teams, and the Greek team in particular, to crack our dramaturgical framework, to hack into our stage like a virus. The aim of these new forms of performance is also to rethink linear dramaturgy by destructuring it, playing on both polyphony and dissonance. This rethinking also applies to the actors. Characters are often approached in a fairly fluid way so that they can be split up, eliminated, or merged, since sometimes teams don't have the same number of actors on stage. This also goes hand in hand with a reflection of the fluidity, or on the contrary, the splintering of identities, a reflection extended thanks to the work with avatars. My third and last point, a theater of overcoming. DPN theater is a theater of transcendence on several levels. First of all, as I've already mentioned, it's a theater that transcends borders. We live in a globalized world where hyperconnectivity means we can access a vast amount of information and make contact with people on the other side of the world via interposed screens. Thanks to technological developments, we can now use Zoom or Discord applications to rehearse our shows and perform together, yet at the same time, we are confronted with a worldwide nationalist retreat, a reinforcement or even a redefinition of geographical borders. The fact that we offer these multicultural shows internationally gives them a symbolic significance, which is also very important for the audience. Theater remains a shared experience, even when it's split, and perhaps even more so because theater is capable of splitting into two worlds, real and virtual, simultaneously. We're all watching the same show at the same time, whether it's 7 p.m. in Manizales, Colombia, or 2 a.m. in Paris, and we exchange even more when we are at distance via chat. This overcoming of geographical and linguistic barriers thanks to subtitles in a turbulent political context for some of our collaborators is also a kind of window on the world that allows them to show themselves. The theater stage finds its extension in the virtual world, and the sometimes minimalist set design on the stage develops in the virtual world, shifting the show's center of gravity. But it's also an intimate challenge, especially for the actor, who is a performer both on stage and in VR. As a result, the actor has to find balance between these two physical and dematerialized spaces. He moves along a line like a tightrope walker. He must find a way to inhabit his body to make it alive and meaningful in both worlds and for both audiences. The avatar becomes a kind of puppet, or even a kind of astral projection that the actor sends to the various connected countries. It's a kind of intimate overreach as the actor exposes himself and lays himself bare. Paradoxically, one might think that equipped with his glasses and escaping into another world, the actor cuts himself off from his presence on stage and from the audience in the room. But on the contrary, he may be demonstrating a greater vulnerability. He can see the audience on stage, so he exposes his body, losing control of it to some extent, since he can't see himself in the eyes or in the body language reflected back to him by the audience. He reveals a projection of himself, a very intimate other self that evolves in a parallel world. Playing with the avatar is a very sensual game of appropriating another body or taming a kind of double, another self. It's this whole process of possession that is revealed live to the public, with the possible flaws and failures of this very fragile double play. Finally, there's a personal challenge for the audience who go beyond their limits and move out of their comfort zone. Attending this kind of performance requires mental gymnastics, the ability to teleport into the virtual world and back into the stage action. This requires ocular mobility, the ability to observe several screens, several degrees of reality between the present scene, the foreign scenes, the single virtual scene, but also collage between virtual reality and stage actions. Sometimes there are also subtitles. This requires the spectator to be extremely active, both intellectually and physically, making this hybrid theater truly immersive. Thank you.